The city of Baltimore is trying to get back to normal following the violence, looting, and arson that broke out after the funeral for Freddie Gray. He's a 25-year-old black man who died of a spinal cord injury while in police custody. Gray is the latest black man to die at the hands of police, prompting protests and calls for law enforcement reform. My guest today can relate to the issue from several perspectives. He's the former mayor of Pontiac, who also served as a police officer in that city for 17 years. Plus, he's a former investigative reporter for the Oakland Press, and he wrote a book called The Todd Road Incident. It's about the shooting of an unarmed black Oakland University student by a white police officer in Alabama during the early 1980s. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Willie Payne to American Black Journal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invite.
So give me a sense of how you saw what went on in Baltimore this week. What does that say to you about what's going on in terms of the relationship between police and black communities?
What happened in Baltimore is commonplace to what has happened in major cities across the country.
Sure.
And certainly there needs to be a need to address it in a more uniform way. There needs to be certainly police reform across the board. But I feel that those involved, the young men who have been shot by police, many of them need to know or should have known how to properly respond to police. And there's a problem across this country with individuals not knowing how to properly respond when confronted by the police. You and I both know probably that the right response could result in either getting a ticket, getting a verbal warning, being hauled into jail, being drawn into a confrontation that could cost you your life.
Right.
So what I have proposed to do is to try and teach young men how to properly respond.
Okay, so let's start. You had 2 points there, one about law enforcement reform, the other about how to respond if you're pulled over. Let's start with the law enforcement reform. From your perspective, what are the things that need to change in terms of the way officers maybe are trained, in terms of how they're sent out and told what they ought to be doing?
As it relates to training, I think there needs to be more sensitivity training courses in ethnicity. Because when you are a police officer, you deal with a variety of people with different ethnic backgrounds.
Sure.
For example, when I worked in the city of Pontiac, we had a large Hispanic community. And oftentimes in the summer, the Puerto Ricans and the Latins would party outside. They'd play their music loud and they'd drink in public as if they were at home. At home, it was okay. But in the city of Pontiac, it was against the law.
Okay.
It was not. So as a police officer, you respond to the scene, you think that these folk know that they're violating the law, and they do not. Now, when I say I, that police officer, if I had some training on the culture of that community, then I would know that these folk are simply engaging in activities that are commonplace to where they live. And I would not be offended by it. But of course, officers are offended by it. And on the same term, the folk, the Hispanic communities, they are offended by the fact that officers...
By the response they get.
Yes, because they think you're just messing with me for no reason. So there needs to be training from both sides.
Right. And that training costs money, of course. Is that training that should happen when people are in the police academy, or is that something that should go on throughout your career?
I think it should be ongoing.
Yeah.
It should certainly happen in the police academy and should be ongoing, probably quarterly, because you have to understand you're dealing with a variety of people with different backgrounds, different beliefs.
And different kind of cultural expectations about how their behavior will be responded to.
And I think when you have police departments and police chiefs and mayors who will engage their officers in those types of training, you have a more well-rounded police department.
Right. Okay, so then the second part of your recommendation is changing the way that that we talk to young men, especially young African-American men, about encounters with the police. Talk to me about the things that you're telling young men that you...
What I'm telling young men, I have I call it my 9+1+1 ways to address police, or what not to do, or what to do when confronted by police. And the number one thing is to cooperate. Cooperate with the police. When you look at those incidences that are happening across America as relates to law enforcement and the African American community, of course, when young black men are approached by police, there's a high level of resentment there. First of all, they think you're just messing with me because I'm black.
Right.
So their response is going to be very negative. So what I'm trying to show young men is that how you respond to police dictates whether you get a traffic ticket, whether you get a verbal warning, whether you get thrown into jail.
Right.
It all depends on your attitude. So we're saying, just comply. If the police are asking you to do certain things, just do those things. And one of the questions I posed to the young people that I talked to, I asked them the question, if Michael Brown would have simply gotten out of the street when the police asked Michael Brown, as it relates to the Ferguson incident, if Michael Brown would have simply gotten out of the street, would Michael Brown still be alive today? And the result, and the answers were...
What do they say when you ask them that?
They were mixed.
Yeah.
Some young folks.
Well,
I
think some people could hear what you're saying and say, "Well, this is blaming the victim."
And
a lot of times these young men not doing anything.
I am not condoning the actions of police.
Sure.
When police take the lives of innocent people, they should be punished. They should be prosecuted.
Right.
But I also have to explain to the young folk that prosecution of police are very rare.
Right.
Because you must understand that police and the prosecutors are all part of the same system.
Yes.
And many of them belong to the same country club or go to church together.
Sure, sure.
And you're not going to have a large degree of prosecutions when it comes to.
And so what you're saying is, you can be frustrated with the system, you can be frustrated with the things that are going on, but when it comes to that one-to-one interaction with a police officer,
push those frustrations aside and
sort
comply.
of put that, and that can be very difficult.
I know, but it takes a lot of resentment. But when you look at the overall picture in its totality, if it's going to save a life, then what we have to do is do what is necessary to save a life.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean,
preserving a life.
And that's what's at stake here.
That's what's at stake.
That if you push back, if you, we saw in Inkster recently, Floyd Dent, he opened the car door and seemed like he was going to get out, and the officers seemed to respond to that. They seemed to think of that as an act of aggression, which it probably wasn't. But perhaps if he hadn't opened the door, they might have responded differently. But there again, I mean, I think a lot of people might see that as you saying, well, you know, these officers are somehow justified for what they're doing.
Well, I hope that they don't come to that conclusion, because again, I am not condoning.
What you're saying is you need both sides to behave.
We need both sides to behave. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the end result would be, appealing to both sides. I too was a victim of police brutality, even as mayor.
You were, okay.
Even as mayor.
Tell me about that.
I was on a road trip, driving from Scottsdale, Arizona to Las Vegas. I'd never been there, so I decided to rent a car and go to Las Vegas. About a mile from the Hoover Dam, I was stopped by several police. I knew it was a felony stop from the onset.
Yeah.
About 5 cars descended on me, stopped my car. Officers armed with guns forced me out of the car, handcuffed me, put me on the ground.
Did they tell you anything about why they were?
I asked why I was being stopped. I was told to shut up, and I complied.
Yeah.
Because I was there by myself, and I've read stories and cases where you had police shootings, and those shootings were justified.
Right.
And later on in the story, you find out that the person had done nothing wrong. In this case, I had done nothing wrong.
Right.
And I asked, at the point where they allowed me to talk, I did ask questions as to why I was being stopped. And it didn't.
And you were the mayor of Pontiac.
Yes, didn't make any sense.
Right.
Got no apology. But of course, I left with everything still intact,
Right,
because I simply complied.
And were you able to follow up with the departments later and get some sort of response?
I made calls to the chief of police there and other authorities there with that police department, names I won't mention.
Sure.
But I was not satisfied with the answers I got. Yeah. Well, actually, on the scene, I was told the reason I was stopped because I was speeding, and they had been following me. That's not
the right response to speeding, though, is it?
They had been chasing me for 5 miles.
Yeah.
5 miles.
Yeah.
Now, being the observant person that I am, having worked as a police officer,
That's
trained
a long
observer,
way. That's right.
it was hard for me to accept.
But I mean, I think the lesson of your story is comply up front, deal with the consequences
deal with it later.
Yes. Live to be able to say what you did was wrong, and we're gonna deal with that.
Absolutely.
And if you respond differently in the moment, you might not get that chance.
And the leaflet that I give to those persons I talk to during my town hall style meetings, there's a list of agencies.
Yeah, right. That they can call. Right.
If they feel their rights have been violated or
that's the right way to deal with these things.
Yeah. So comply, complain later. Yeah. Don't fight in the streets because you lose.
Right.
You do your fighting in court.